Hi, this is Daryl Myatt from Keller, Texas. Today is Wednesday, September 7th, 2011. You know, as we're approaching this weekend, which Sunday we will be commemorating the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 Twin Tower attacks in New York City. Ironically enough, Dallas Cowboys are playing the New York Jets that day in New York. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. Here's a story out of Israel National News. Check this out. Iran insists that New York's Twin Towers were never hit by a plane. Yeah, I know. Iran doesn't give up. You know, near the anniversary of 9/11, its media said New York's towers were never hit by a plane and that actually explosives collapsed them. Now I know there's a lot of you conspiracy theorists out there who think it was an inside job and all this stuff, and I'm not debunking that. I honestly couldn't tell you the truth. From what I saw some planes hit the Twin Towers. This story says Iran doesn't give up. Near the anniversary of 9/11, its media said New York's World Trade Towers were never hit by a plane and that fire could not have toppled them. The Iranian government-controlled Press TV told Iranians today the collapse remains an unsolved mystery and that scientists, architects, and engineers all over the world have questioned the official version of how World Trade Center fell down. Okay, they claim it was never hit by a plane. We've all seen the video that clearly they were hit by a plane. And, you know, I know there's all the people out there who say, oh, there were controlled explosions, it was meant to brought down, it was an inside job, all this stuff. And I'm not here to debate that, because honestly, I don't know the truth, and probably you don't know the truth either. If evil governments were involved and caused it, you know, they'll have to answer to God for that. I'm not here to argue that point. I am here to argue the fact that they say it wasn't hit by planes, because I'm looking at a picture of a plane that hit one of them right now. They were hit by planes, and the fires were fueled by jet fuel. I'm sure the fires got very intense. Anyway, I'm pretty sure these buildings were not designed to withstand the impact of 747s that were fully fueled and fully loaded with passengers. Pretty sure when the architects sat down they didn't say, you know, just in case, we need to prepare for this just in case. No, they don't do that. But you know, this isn't unusual, coming from someone who also claims that there were never two Jewish temples on the Temple Mount when we have clear archaeological and historical proof and biblical proof that there were. They also claim the Holocaust didn't happen when we clearly know that it did. Many of our great-grandfathers and granddads were probably involved in some part of that. So, it just reminds me of a passage in the Bible. It is 2 Timothy 4, verse 3. It says, "For the time will come when men will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry." They will turn away from sound doctrine and turn away from the truth to just hear what their itching ears want to hear. You know, sadly, this is not only the case with the Iranian leadership, but it's the case with a lot of people on the face of this earth. They refuse to believe the truth of Jesus Christ. They turn their itching ears to hear what they want to hear, and they surround themselves with teachers that turn away from sound doctrine and turn away from the truth and turn aside to myths, much like the myth of Islam. It seems funny to me that here's someone who can sit here and claim something's not true, yet they believe someone flew on a winged horse when there wasn't one single witness. They refused to believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead when there was over 500 people who saw Jesus after he rose from the dead. Clearly they have no truth in them. Alright, let's go to, here's a story out of the Telegraph. It says Palestinian statehood is essential for success of Israel peace negotiations. This story just, it's almost funny. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas claims that achieving Palestinian statehood is essential for the success of peace negotiations with Israel. Isn't that like putting the cart before the horse? Aren't there peace negotiations going to help settle the question about Palestinian statehood? Not, give us a state and then we'll talk about the peace process. Addressing a group of Israeli intellectuals in Ramallah, the Palestinian leader said that despite U.S. and Israeli opposition, he will approach the United Nations for recognition later this month with the peace process uppermost in mind. Abbas said, "We don't want to delegitimize Israel." Yes, they do. "We want to legitimize ourselves," he said. Should the Palestinian bid be successful, Abbas claimed the Palestinian Authority would then discuss the finer details of a future Palestinian state in talks with the Israeli leadership. He also insisted the Palestinian Authority would continue to work with Israel on security issues, pointing out that Palestinian and Israeli security forces have cooperated successfully for years to contain the threat of terrorism in the West Bank. I am so curious to see what's going to happen with this development. If the Palestinians are going to get their state, if Israel will have to do some type of preemptive strike on Iran to stop them from getting nuclear weapons, if Elenin is truly going to block out the sun for 3 days, what's going to happen at the Feast of the Trumpets? This is a very, very important month in Bible prophecy. And I think we need to watch and pray, just like Jesus said. Here's a story out of Haaretz. Turkey set to sign military pact with Egypt after cutting trade ties with Israel. Ooh, another puzzle piece falls right into place. A military and economic alliance with Egypt is set to be signed by Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The deal should be clinched when Erdogan visits Cairo next Monday, the first such visit paid by a Turkish Prime Minister in 15 years. The alliance is not intended as revenge against Israel. Erdogan's intention is to extend Turkey's influence to areas it has not reached in past decades. Interesting. I'm not going to read the rest of this story for sake of time, but Turkey and Egypt getting together, and yet they both have issues with Israel. Turkey's on the northern end, Egypt on the south and a little to the west. Of course, you've got Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Hezbollah in Gaza, Hamas, in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria. The enemies of Israel are setting themselves up and getting themselves in place, preparing for the Psalm 83 war. And it just makes you wonder what's going to happen first, war or peace. And honestly, I couldn't tell you. Here's a story out of Yahoo. Says Iran revolution just a matter of time, says U.S. Defense Chief. This out of Washington today. Revolution in Iran appears to be a matter of time, U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta predicted, saying the Iranian reform movement was learning from revolts in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Syria. Panetta, a former CIA director who took over the Pentagon's top job in July, was asked on the Charlie Rose television show whether the Arab Spring might spread to non-Arab Iran. Panetta responded, "Absolutely." I think we saw an evidence of that in the last election in Iran, that there was a movement within Iran that raised those very same concerns that we're seeing elsewhere, Panetta said. And I think in many ways it's a matter of time before that kind of change and reform and revolution occurs in Iran as well. Very interesting to see what's going on all over the world right now. I think we clearly need to keep an eye on Israel, keep an eye on Iran. Now, I do this, in case you're new to my site, I do this to help people see the kind of events that are leading up to the return of Jesus Christ. Because while the Bible tells us that we will not know the day or the hour, Jesus gave us signs so that we might know the season. He told us things that would happen in Matthew 24 and Mark 13 and Luke 21, things we can look for that will lead up to the time of his return. And we're seeing a lot of these things happen now. There's also prophecies in Isaiah, Zechariah, Daniel, Ezekiel, several other books, Revelation, of course, being a big one. But we're seeing so many Bible prophecies happening now. And, you know, for someone like me, who's been watching Bible prophecy nearly his whole life and studying the Bible, I find it to be very fascinating and exciting. And, you know, don't let the news of the world make you afraid, okay? That's not what you need to feel. What you need to feel is that time is getting shorter and shorter for people to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. That's what you need to feel. That's what you need to think about. That's what you need to focus on. More people need to be saved now more than ever before. You know, I believe there will be one last person that's saved. You know, God has an eternal plan, and there's going to be that one last person that God says, that's it. That was the last man saved. Now we can continue. I think we could be getting very close to that last person saved. Here's a story out of Fox News. It says sun unleashes 2 massive X-class solar flares. Just as many Americans got back to work after the long Labor Day weekend, the sun jolted to life as well, unleashing a massive solar flare just one day after another sunstorm sent a stream of particles racing toward Earth. You might be thinking, what's this got to do with anything? Well, Jesus told us there would be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. This is a sign, clearly. And I understand we're seeing a lot more of these because technology on Earth has grown. This X-class solar flare, the most powerful type of sunstorm, erupted at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday the 6th, yesterday, and hit its peak strength 8 minutes later, according to a space weather update by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. Anyway, these kind of things can knock out GPS, cell phones, power grids on Earth. It can be pretty serious. And, you know, technology has gotten greater and greater that we can see these kind of things happening on a bigger scale more frequently. So, just another sign in the sun. Here's something out of Yahoo also. Survey says U.S. falls to 5th place in global competitiveness. This out of Geneva. The U.S. has tumbled further down a global ranking of the world's most competitive economies, landing at 5th place because of its huge deficits and declining public faith in government, a global economic group said today. The announcement by the World Economic Forum was the latest bad news for the Obama administration, which has been struggling to boost the sinking U.S. economy and lower an unemployment rate of more than 9%. You know what? You can't blame it on Bush any longer, Obama. This was all brought on by you, and somehow, I think, intentionally. Yes, I said that. I believe Obama is put in place to bring America down to its knees so that America cannot be the one that stands between the world and Israel, so that the world can advance against Israel and carry out Satan's agenda. Just my thoughts. And he's doing a good job at bringing America down. That's the only good job he's doing right now. God help us if we have to endure another 4 years of this man. Please don't let it happen. Please, Lord. America can't take it. But, you know, if it's God's plan, it's God's plan. And we must trust in Him no matter how bad it looks through our human eyes. Switzerland held on to the top spot for the 3rd consecutive year in the annual ranking by the Geneva Base Forum, which is best known for its exclusive meeting of luminaries in Davos, Switzerland every January. Singapore moved up to second place, bumping Sweden down to third. Finland moved up to fourth place from seventh last year. The U.S. was in fourth place last year after falling from number 1 in 2008. So clearly we're on our way down. Doesn't look like it's going to be getting any better anytime soon. The rankings, which the forum has issued for more than 3 decades, are based on economic data and a survey of 15,000 business executives. Interesting. Speaking of our illustrious leader, Barack Obama, have you heard of H.R. 4646? It's a 1% transaction tax. Snopes says that H.R. 4646 is real. Okay, Nancy Pelosi and others are determined to get this thing passed by hiding it in the November elections. This is another Obama change. Everybody asks for change, right? And now I don't even have any change in my pockets. This means if you make any deposit to any account of, say, $1,000, you're taxed $10. If your Social Security is automatically deposited, it is automatically gets reduced by 1%. When does this hypocrisy stop? This is almost unbelievable. We'll have to hide our money, or lack thereof, under the mattress. Now, the bill is H.R. 4646, introduced by U.S. Rep. Peter DeFazio out of Oregon and U.S. Senator Tom Harkin of Iowa. It's now in committee and will probably not be brought out until after the November elections. So, Barack Obama's finance team and Nancy Pelosi are recommending a 1% transaction fees on all financial transactions. His plan is to sneak it in after the November election to keep it under the radar. Here's what Nancy has to say about this wonderful idea. It's only 1%. This is a 1% tax on all transactions to or from any financial institution, banks, credit unions, mutual funds, brokers, etc. Any deposit you make will have a 1% tax charged to it. Any withdrawal you make, 1% tax. Any transfer within your account, transfer to or from savings and checking, 1% tax charged. Any ATM transaction, withdrawal or deposit, 1% tax. If your paycheck or your Social Security is directly deposit, 1% tax. If you carry a check to your bank to deposit, 1% tax. If you take cash into deposit, 1% tax. If you receive any income from bond, dividend, or stock, 1% tax. Any real estate transaction, 1% tax. This is on top of the 3.8 they just slid in on you, totaling nearly 5%, plus commissions, plus tax, 11%. Some states' excise tax is an additional 1%, so 12% or more to buy or sell a house. Pay for your insurance, 1%. This administration is all about your money, and they will take it from you however and whatever way they can. This is from the man who promised that if you make under $250,000 per year, you will not see 1 penny of new tax. Remember, he's completely honest and trustworthy, and he's a politician, so everything he says is true. You know what? They can't figure out a way to spend the government's money. How do you think they're going to be able to spend ours wisely? I've had about enough. Speaking of government, here's something to consider. The English language has some wonderfully anthropomorphic collective nouns for the various groups of animals. We're all familiar with a herd of cows, or a flock of chickens, a school of fish, and a gaggle of geese, right? Well, here's some of the lesser known ones. A pride of lions, a murder of crows, as well as their cousins, the rooks and ravens, an exaltation of doves, and presumably, because they look so wise, a parliament of owls. Okay? Now consider what you call a group of baboons. Okay? Baboons. They are the loudest, most dangerous, most obnoxious, most viciously aggressive, and the very least intelligent of all primates. They're the dumbest primates on the face of the earth. And what is the proper collective noun for a group of baboons that are so loud and dangerous, obnoxious, aggressive, and least intelligent? Believe it or not, it's called a congress. How fitting and how very appropriate. Let's go to the Word today. In Revelation 21:11 it says, "It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal." You know, in Revelation 21, the Apostle John gets a glimpse of heaven, and he shares with us the magnitude and the majesty of our Father's house and our eternal home. You know, Jesus said, "I go and prepare a place for you. In my Father's house are many mansions." In Revelation 21, he says the foundations of the city's walls are decorated with every kind of precious stone. There are 12 gates, each made with a single pearl. And the great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. John tells us about an angel with a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. The city was laid out as a square, or actually more like a cube, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length and as wide as and high as it is long. The angel measured the wall using human measurement, and it was 144 cubits thick. It's in Revelation 21, verse 16 and 17. Now, these measurements in layman's terms would be like this. If we were to lay out the heavenly measurements on the U.S. map, heaven would stretch from Mexico to Canada and from the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean, and it would be as wide as it is tall. That means heaven may be 1,500 miles high. 1,500 miles high. Airplanes usually fly at a height of approximately 8 miles high. So imagine how high 1,500 miles up is. If there were 20 billion residents in heaven this size, each person would have about 75 acres of land. So no matter how you lay it out, the Bible shows us heaven is a very big place. It's a secure and stable place, and there is room for everyone. You know what? God is not going to go, "Oh, there's too many people. I didn't expect this many people. I got to make it bigger." That's not going to be a problem. God knows exactly how many people, down to the very last one, is going to end up there. He already knows. He's preparing a place for us, but only if you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And I promise you, there will be no virgins waiting for you. We're talking about heaven. Flesh will not be able to enter there, and spirit has no need for virgins, I can assure you. You know, as the saying goes, you can't take it with you, but when it comes to heaven, there's enough room to invite all your friends. I promise you, God will make it as big as He needs to make it to accommodate everyone. So, are you equipped for the battle? That's the question. Let me go to Ephesians 6. I want to read from verse 12 through 18. I know you've probably heard me read this before, and you're probably very familiar with this passage, but it's very important in these times. Ephesians 6, verse 12 through 18. "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the saints." We need to be equipped. You know what? God gives us what we need to be equipped. He gave us His Word. He gave us His truth. He gave us His Son, Jesus Christ. That's the greatest gift He can ever give you. And the cool part about it is it's absolutely free. All you have to do is reach out and accept it. Romans 10:9 says, if you will confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved. You know what? Let me just go there and read that. I don't want anybody saying, you know what, you misquoted that. Because I'm pretty sure I didn't do it exactly. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you confess and are saved. I hope you know my Savior Jesus, because he's the only way to true salvation. God bless you guys. Good Lord willing, I'll see you again tomorrow.